What good Catholic would not appreciate the opportunity to spend some time in Eucharistic adoration? Before the Blessed Sacrament, Jesus Christ is really present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Holy Eucharist. Before him, we find ourselves before the Lord of Lords, who now sits at the right hand of the Father, really present among us. Without leaving heaven, he comes to us in a defined place. He makes himself locally present to us so that we can worship him, so that we can implore of him his grace and guidance, so that we can lay bare our souls to him, all our joys and sorrows, all the concerns and anxieties that press upon our minds, so that we can quite simply take comfort in being in the presence of the God of our hearts. Since we have such an excellent opportunity in Eucharistic adoration, let us examine it in greater detail. What is meant by the term adoration? To answer this question, it is always best to consult the most renowned theologians of Holy Mother Church, and in particular the angelic doctor, St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas tells us that there are 3 levels of worship. They are designated by the Latin terms of dulia, hyperdulia, and latria. Dulia is the veneration we give to the saints in heaven. Hyperdulia is reserved for the Blessed Virgin Mary. And finally, latria is the unique cult of worship given to God alone. The reason being that God alone is the infinite, all-perfect, and supreme being, the Creator and Lord of all things. Our Lord lays this out clearly for us in the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 4, verse 10. The Lord thy God shalt thou adore, and him only shalt thou serve. We furthermore see that adoration is an act of the soul and the body together. It is both spiritual and physical. St. John Damascene teaches us that we are composed of a double or twofold nature, intellectual and sensible. We offer to God a twofold adoration, at once spiritual because of the internal devotion of our minds, and at the same time bodily because of the exterior humbling of the body, which follows the acts of the mind. And since in all acts of latria, that which is exterior is referred to that which is interior as being of greater importance, consequently, adoration with the body is offered because of the acts of adoration in our soul. In other words, we show signs of humility using our bodies in order to incite our affections to submit to God. This is because for human beings, it is what is called connatural, or following from our nature, the way our nature is made, to proceed from exterior sense-perceptible things, such as bread and wine, to the interior realities understood by our intelligence, by our mind, such as the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. It must be understood that adoration is essentially an interior reverence of God, but secondarily in certain bodily signs of humility. For example, when we genuflect, we visibly proclaim our weakness compared to God. When we prostrate ourselves, we show that of ourselves, apart from God, we are nothing. While our 5 senses of sight, sound, hearing, touch, and taste cannot reach God, these nevertheless urge our minds towards God. And our minds can reach God because they are the spiritual faculty in us. In some churches, there is perpetual Eucharistic adoration, the consecrated host being ever exposed at all times for adoration. In most places, however, adoration lasts for longer or shorter periods of time, such as an hour or several hours, or perhaps a day or a few days, as in the devotion of the 40 hours before Ash Wednesday. Eucharistic adoration is a particular form of devotion to the real presence of Jesus Christ, which saw its most significant development later in church history. However, there is evidence to indicate that already in the 4th century it was customary for the newly baptized to adore for 8 days following their baptism the exposed Blessed Sacrament. Then, in the later Middle Ages, about the beginning of the 13th century, Eucharistic adoration really began to take root in the life of the Church. Exposition of the Blessed Sacrament and adoration is often associated with the establishment of the Feast of Corpus Christi. But we should note that the first recorded instance of perpetual adoration comes from before the establishment of this feast. It occurred at Avignon in France. On the 11th September of the year of our Lord, 1226, in obedience to the will of King Louis VII, who had just defeated the Albigensian heretics, the veiled Blessed Sacrament was exposed in the chapel of the Holy Cross as an act of thanksgiving. There were so many adorers that the bishop decided to continue the adoration through the night and into the next day. This proposal was subsequently ratified by the Holy See in Rome. It is said that there has been perpetual adoration in the Cathedral of Lugo, Spain, for more than 1,000 years, in reparation for the Priscillian heresy. Exposition, and consequently adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, became comparatively general only in the 15th century. It is curious to note that these adorations were usually for some special reason. For example, for the cure of a sick person, or on the eve of an execution in the hope that the condemned would convert and die a happy death. King Philip II of Spain founded in the Escorial the Vigil of the Blessed Sacrament. Members of religious orders in successive pairs would remain constantly, night and day, before the exposed Blessed Sacrament. From the devotion of the 40 hours, begun in 1534 and officially established in 1592, developed perpetual adoration, spreading from hours of adoration in one or more churches in Rome until it gradually extended throughout the world, so that it may be truly said that during every hour of the year, the Blessed Sacrament, solemnly exposed, is adored by throngs of the faithful. In the year 1641, Baron de Renty, famous for devotion to the Blessed Sacrament, founded in St. Paul's Parish in Paris an association of ladies for perpetual adoration. In 1648, also in Paris, at the Church of St. Sulpice, perpetual adoration was established in reparation for an outrage committed by thieves of the Sacred Host. In France, during the 17th and 18th centuries, perpetual adoration spread gradually throughout all the churches and chapels of certain dioceses. The earliest mention of this practice is in 1658, when the churches in the Diocese of Chartres were opened for this purpose from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the evening, and wherever there were religious communities possessing a chapel, the adoration was continued day and night. Then, interrupted in France by the anti-clerical and anti-monarchist revolution of 1789, perpetual adoration was eventually restored under King Louis Philippe in the mid-19th century in some dioceses, but especially in the year 1848, by the influence of the celebrated musician Hermann Cohen, who afterwards became a discalced Carmelite under the name of Father Augustine of the Blessed Sacrament. Eucharistic adoration has since flourished in France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Mexico, Brazil, and other South American countries, and other countries of Europe, the United States, and Canada, and elsewhere. Nocturnal adoration is carried on in many countries by associations of men and women. The first confraternity for nocturnal adoration, called the Pious Union of Adorers of the Blessed Sacrament, was founded in Rome in 1810. In Paris, before the passage of the Associations Law, nocturnal adoration was practiced in more than 130 churches and chapels by more than 2,500 men. Though countless confraternities and pious associations for Eucharistic adoration have come into existence, the Society of the Most Blessed Sacrament, founded in 1857 by Father Peter Julien Aymard, is perhaps the best known of all. Needless to say, all of these confraternities and associations of the faithful, dedicated to adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, carry with their membership all sorts of special indulgences, both partial and plenary. But even if one is not a member of such an association, no price can be put on the opportunity we have in spending time with our exposed Eucharistic Lord. There he offers us his grace. He offers us the love of his most sacred heart. Let us try to appreciate the offer. Come, let us adore him.
Regina Caeli, Gaude et celitare Virgo Maria, Alleluia. Quia surrexit Dominus vere, Alleluia. Oremus. Deus qui per resurrectionem Filii Tui Domini nostri Iesu Christi mundum laetificare dignatus es. Per esta quesumus ut perius genitricem Virginem Mariam, perpetue capiamus gaudia vitae, per eundem Christum Dominum nostrum.